start our meeting for today. Today's Tuesday, June the 17th, and we are in council chambers for the Committee of the Whole meeting. We would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa, the Syilx, and the Sinixt people, and is home to the Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honor their connection to the land and rivers and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. I received no late items, and so if I could have an adoption of the agenda as circulated, moved by Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Page. All those in favor? That carries. We have some minutes to adopt. The Committee of the Whole meetings on February the 18th, March the 18th, and April the 15th. Moved by Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Page. Councillors, any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor, and that carries. And we've already had the cultural presentation from the Wild Rose Dancers. I think that was just an excellent way to start our evening tonight. So item number 7 is public participation, where questions or comments from the public, a maximum of 15 minutes. I did ask the crowd, and I do see there was 6 names that I received, and so I do have the leniency to give a bit more time. So usually you get 3 minutes, so I will allow all 6 people to speak, so that will take us to 18 minutes. So I just need to read a statement about public participation. City Council welcomes comments from the public on issues it is dealing with or other issues of interest to the public. Before speaking, please state your name and area of residency, the city of the RDCK. Comments from the public will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. This is not the forum for complaints, which are dealt with by staff through the established complaint procedure. Council will not make any decisions at this meeting about the matter you raise, but may refer the matter to staff for follow-up. Speakers must not address topics that relate to matters for which a public hearing must be held prior to a council's consideration of the matters or adoption of a bylaw. Speakers shall address all comments through the mayor or presiding member, and please avoid clapping or displaying any emotional responses, as such actions will not be permitted. Maintaining a composed demeanor ensures that all opinions can be heard in a setting that is as unbiased as possible. So I will start with Jenna.
Wonderful. Is this where I'm supposed to sit?
Yes, please.
Wonderful. Thanks for having us here today. My name's Jenna. I am one of the vendors at the Nelson Wednesday Farmers Market. Along with my husband, we own Usilly Sausage. There's a lot of vendors who wanted to be here today who also couldn't be, and so I have probably at least 30 emails of them all sharing their perspectives as well. I live in Castlegar. Some of the other people who've emailed are from Nelson, Grand Forks, Creston, etc. As you guys well know, the market was moved to Cottonwood pretty last minute a few weeks ago. We were very nervous about that move as we did the Cottonwood market back in 2021, and it was pretty awful, as I think you guys know the history. All the vendors dwindled down, sales dwindled down, and we got it back to Baker, revitalized it, and it's been going great for the most part. The vendors I've spoken with, as I have been on the advisory committee since, I believe, 2021, whenever it was created as well. I've been quite happy with sales and people coming out. Down at Cottonwood, that's not been the case again, unfortunately. The sales have plummeted for every single vendor. Ours are at 50% of what they were on Baker, as well as many of the farmers and other vendors I've talked to who are food-based are around 50% that I've spoken with, and artisans are down as much as 70 to 90% as they often rely on the tourism. So unfortunately, this is having a huge economic impact. It impacts our staff. We have to cut hours. Many of the other people who've emailed are saying they're having to lay staff off. They've hired people just to go to this market, and there just isn't the sales or the people there to shop on a Wednesday because people are working and people are busy, as you guys know. It's also out of the way. And so we're here to ask for it to be moved back to downtown core, whether it's Baker Street or within a block of Baker Street. I know there's been some issues. So we're hoping that that can happen in a timely manner because people have dropped out of the market, lots and lots of us will have to if it's not moved imminently. So We're just wondering if that can happen. We know we watched the city council meeting last month, which you guys did mention that if it didn't go well, perhaps it could be moved, as well as Terry has mentioned it could be moved as well. So we're here to find out how that can happen, when that can happen, and hopefully we can all work together to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next, I have Jake.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jake Middleditch. I'm a long-term resident in Nelson, and just here to follow up on the same kind of conversation that's just been started there already. As everyone knows, the changes to the Nelson market on Wednesday, moving down to Cottonwood, has profoundly affected a lot of the businesses. Many of these businesses have, as mentioned, hired staff, committed resources, committed funding to be able to support participating in these markets, and having something change like that at such short notice, but so profoundly affecting them in the way they can do business, is really impacting a lot of the vendors. Now we talk of them as vendors, we talk of ourselves as vendors, but these are local businesses that are really trying to enrich the community and showcase their skills and abilities and products in a way that can reach the public. And my question to the council and to the mayor is that in some of the communications we've seen that the council maybe hadn't been part of this discussion in making the change, and that it was maybe perhaps made by city managers and with the exclusion of the city council and not being part of the conversation. My question is, how can the Nelson City Council support this idea of supporting local businesses when these questions that have been brought up to move a market that so profoundly changes the livelihoods of people haven't really been discussed in open committee or open conversation, and were actually done by non-elected officials, because us as citizens of the town really hope to have people representing us, and you are them. And so we would really like to understand how that could happen, and also how we can move to fix the situation so that we can support our local business owners and keep the rich diversity of the opportunities in Nelson that make Nelson so unique to the Kootenays and to Canada. That's my question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Jason.
I'll be Richard, but Mayor, councillors, thanks for being here. I'm gonna put this back on just.
That's okay, it's whatever way you feel comfortable.
Starting a new trend. Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for all the work that goes on behind the scenes. I know this is just one small part of everything that you do here. And yeah, obviously it impacts myself as well. I'm a vendor full-time for a living. Grateful to Community Futures for helping me get a business plan and get it off the ground and make it work. And all the other supports in Nelson. There's a lot of good community organizations here that help businesses and being able to stay here and live on a vending wage. Yeah, I guess just a couple things as far as planning a market season. I have a calendar with where I'm going to be when, and this last minute change is definitely shocking as far as the stuff around the fees rising and researching other downtown locations and making the fees match the locations, and then to have the location change from a downtown location was all just a bit disorienting. Just some trust issues there as far as contractual agreements between vendors and people hosting the venue when there's an expectation of a downtown location and it's not a downtown location, then there's not even enough time to plan where else to go. I try a few Wednesdays to see how it goes kind of thing, but it has been down. Sales have been down, especially as the heat comes for people to come down around that corner. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. We'll find out. And I guess being a vendor, not a farm vendor, the retail aspect of Baker Street is a little different than somebody's going to run down to Cottonwood to get their veggies or whatever. I think that's pretty much Yeah, just as far as like the trust issue, I would request that the fees be reduced just because of the impact on even just the, you know, the vending environment, this year. And I was told, just, this is my last point, but just that I understood that there was 400 vendors on deck, when I'd asked questions about the fee increases. If there's that many vendors on deck, I wonder why there isn't more promotion or more room available for all the self-employed people that are wanting to vend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, I have Judy.
Hello, everybody. So I'm Designs Brilliant along with my sister. And we spent a lot of money and about 9 months making our jewelry. We do a lot of handwork that's very intense. Labor, we commit pretty much 90% of all our resources to the market. It's an amazing experience. Except for this year. We already know that this season will be a loss. We don't sell fruit, we don't sell veggies, we don't sell things that everyone is just gonna go, I'll go grab something. We sell luxury adornment, and we know this. We recognize this. And part of that is the Wednesday crowd downtown is a completely different dynamic for shoppers compared to Saturday on the market. Everyone has been telling me while I've waded into arguments on Facebook about how beautiful Cottonwood is. And I agree, and I say it's wonderful, it's lovely, it really is, I was just there. But it's not accessible to the transit crowd, not accessible to the seniors, not accessible for people who are just there for their lunch hour, and not accessible for people who just don't know where the market actually is. Most people can find their way downtown, or at least start at Oso Negro and then go from there. So we've already had to drop 3 dates. And as I said before, yeah, we're viewing this season as a complete loss. We're still gonna stick our faces in and commit, because why else would we have spent all this time and all this money doing this? But our business supports 18 other businesses. Each one of you back there, I don't know how many businesses they support, but if we, me and my sister, support 18 businesses, then you know that there's hundreds of businesses being represented by the folks behind me. And I think the very late decision to move the market is poor. I don't know all the behind the scenes, but I suspect we'll be dealing with the results for quite a while. And I know that maybe, no matter what I say or think, we're down at Cottonwood for this year, okay? But there has to be then alternatives available to us so we can access the downtown core with all that that implies, so that all of us can get back together and start making this town what it is. I mean, Nelson is beautiful, Nelson is charming, Nelson has so many entrepreneurs. Nelson has the highest number of entrepreneurs in Canada. I've gone through Community Futures, my sister's gone through Community Futures. There is so much hard work. There's been 20 years of hard work that my sister and I have done. Started with a TV tray on Hall Street, and we've just continued and continued. But this year really will test as to whether or not it's viable for us after all this time. So I'm hoping that even if things might not change for this summer, that there is new life, new vision, and new directions for next year. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy.
Josh.
Hi, my name's Josh Wapp. I live at 221 Beasley Street in Nelson, and I have done so for 24 and a half years. Anyway, I was hoping this would be filmed tonight. I someone told me that there was a software issue or something like this, but anyway, somebody made a comment online that disturbed me. They were talking about counselors needed a slap up the head, and I wanted the public to know that that's not gonna help anything. That's not diplomatic, that's not good, and I find it disturbing that people go to these lengths, because I know that the RDCK meetings basically had to be shut down because people got so angry at people, so. Anyway, that's my only concern, and I know I've been an axe grinder over the years. I've come down, and so, you know, I can do something else because it hasn't worked. So that's it for now. My other concerns, I'll come and brush my teeth so maybe I won't grit through them so much. Anyway, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Okay, and last but not least, in the string of J's, like a string of pearls, John Alton.
Hey, everybody. John, I live uphill, and I was directly involved in the market for 10 years, so I was really distressed to hear that all of a sudden it was gonna be moved to Cottonwood from downtown location, because I knew that wouldn't work very well for the vendors. And I'm happy the vendors are here, some of them speaking directly and sharing, you know, how this is impacting them. But I just wanted to speak to the decision, how the decision was made, because I'm disturbed that council, I understand, didn't know. So there wasn't consultation with council or even the market committee. So to me, it feels like there was a breakdown in, you know, communication, in, you know, decision-making process. So yeah, I just question, and I hope this looked into, you know, what decisions get to be made by staff. Because to me, this decision to make affects everybody in Nelson. And so it should be, you know, run through council, should be able to have sign off on it at least. And also the timing of it, because it was about parking. I heard it was because of parking. Well, we know the parking. We knew what was happening with parking. I think, as far as I know, there's no surprises. So the decision could have been made last year, because people running a business have to know what they're getting into. So yeah, I would also ask the market to go back on Baker, and from the response on Facebook, it was just like people, almost 95% of people were saying, no, they do not want this. We do not want the market to move. So yeah, why not 5 hours a week? Why not, okay, there's some traffic congestion for 5 hours a week. So maybe that's what I would ask. So, okay, we got some congestion, 5 hours a week, and we got the market. So, that's it, that's what I'd like to say.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So I'd like to thank Gina, Jake, Jason,
John.
Judy, John, and Josh for speaking up tonight. As a Jay, as Janice, I appreciate that you've taken the time to come out tonight and tell us what you think. So really appreciate that. So okay, and now one last call, because there was a couple of you there that were like about 30 seconds. But one last time, if there's one more person that really wants to come up, otherwise I'm going to close off public time. Okay, so.
Okay.
Okay. They know that there's a meeting.
First of all, I speak
Yeah, I
Spanish.
know there's
I will try to explain, okay, English, okay. First of all, we are immigrant. We started our business 1 year ago. And we participated from the Wednesday last season, and it was completely different. You know, every business need flow, need people to buy. Otherwise, we cannot exist. And it's just because the decision it's made early. It's just because with this, if we stay all the season in the same place, we cannot support our business, for sure. And I don't know what we can do to change the place. many people ask, oh, poor, you're in Cottonwood this year? Oh, poor you. And we also are participating in trail, and it's perfect. It's great. Many people support, and it's not good to compare, but it's our first time in trail, and we are selling the double amount that we sell here. And then when we take the decision, where, why, everything, you need to buy stuff, buy product, buy everything before. And we love Nelson. We started Nelson. We sell in Nelson in some places. But if you don't support us, what we can do? That's, I think, hopefully you can change your mind. I don't know who is responsible, but hopefully.
Thank you. Okay, so the next item that we have up is delegations. And we have the Kootenai Climbing Association, so are they here? Oh, there you are. Come on up, and I think Sonia's just trying to get through to get your presentation up. So we have Cam and Jamie from the Kootenai Climbing Association, and they're gonna present an update on the Cube 2.0 to council.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Hi.
Good evening, hello. Thank you for that introduction. It's great to be here. As mentioned, I'm Jamie Moy. I'm the Vice President of the Kootenai Climbing Association, and this is Cam Shute. He's our expansion chair. We are the nonprofit that oversees the Cube Climbing Center here in Nelson, and just wanted to start by saying that this council has been instrumental in helping us achieve our goal of building a larger, more state-of-the-art sustainable climbing center in Nelson, both to better meet the community's demand for indoor climbing and to showcase the local mass timber and timber processing industries. Since our last update, we're happy to have brought on two key industry partners. That's me and Ken Kolesnikoff, making the announcement at a fundraising event at Uptown Sports Bar this past fall. Spearhead and Kolesnikoff together will be providing a combined just over $700,000 worth of in-kind materials and expertise to build the facility. REDIP, the Rural Economic Development and Infrastructure Program, granted us just a tiny smidge under $400,000 in funding. We are elated. We positioned our project as the Cube 2.0 Sustainable Climbing Center and Mass Timber Social Enterprise Project, a bold step towards sustainable recreation and innovation. So the Cube 2.0 isn't just a climbing center, it's a visionary project that 1, showcases local mass timber and timber processing industries, 2, supports the growth of BC's mass timber manufacturing sector, and 3, creates a vibrant, sustainable hub for climbers and community members alike. In summary, this is more than a climbing wall, it's a launch pad for rural innovation, sustainability, and economic development in the Kootenays. And that money we received in May is going directly towards our final design. We're still waiting, one second there, on final decisions from the Mass Timber Demonstration Program. That's another big grant. We just found out last week we were given $50,000 from ETSI BC, that's the Economic Trust of the BC Southern Interior, and that money is to go towards fundraising, which we're super stoked about because we are a fully 100% volunteer board, and we could use some help with that. We do intend to apply for the gaming grant, specifically the BC Community Gaming Capital Project. That's the $250,000 one. The summer 20 27 intake, and we envision that's going to go for kind of final interior fit out to open to the public. So things like flooring, climbing wall elements, safety equipment, and other facility startup needs. Socializing, Cam and I are learning the art of socializing with our government representatives, and I like to use the word acclimatizing them to our project. It's a climbing term, right? Brittany Anderson has been clutch here. So she has made really key introductions for us, starting with Brenda Bailey back in 2023 when she was a Jedi minister. And Brenda Bailey is the one who actually recommended the REDIP grant to us, which turned out really well, which is awesome. Brenda's now the Minister of Finance, and Diana Gibson is a Jedi minister. We had the pleasure of meeting Diana in person this spring, along with David Eby, and we really feel like we're making inroads connecting with key decision makers and raising awareness about our project and why it matters. Next up, see Spencer here on the list. That's our Minister of Tourism, Arts, Culture, and Sports. And Cam, who we nicknamed Relentless on our team. Relentless Cam Shoot is currently working with Spencer's people to make that connection.
Slowly.
But surely. Next slide, please. On the community outreach scene, we're continuing to do outreach and fundraisers about the Cube 2.0. So our last big fundraiser was a screening of the Real Rock Climbing Film Tour in May, which brought in more than $1,000. And then this past spring in March, we screened the Women's Adventure Film Tour and did a silent auction, which brought in just over $7,400. Our next fundraiser will be in the fall, in probably September, October, at Uptown Sports Bar. And then the Kootenai Co-op named us their Community Organization of the Month for May, which was incredible. They collected money for the new climbing gym at the Tiller, as well as giving us all the proceeds from their member barbecue on May 22nd. They also came in the current Cube Climbing Gym, filmed a really fun segment about us, about our project, for their social media feeds. It was just a really great experience, and we're still waiting for final tally, but last we checked, their estimate was $1,400 in fundraising that the club did for us. So awesome. I'm gonna let Cam speak just briefly in a moment about the low carbon homes pilot, but quickly the patrons campaign. That's the one where individuals and businesses can make a donation in exchange for getting a permanent plaque on what we're calling our Wall of Honor in the new facility, and a discount on the first year's climbing pass. We've raised nearly $87,000 through that. If you haven't gotten in on it, this is your time. It's your piece of immortality. $600 is the investment. You can pay that in a lump sum or $50 a month for a year. All right, Cam, tell us about low carbon home pilot project and then bring us home.
Sure. This was an opportunity to participate in a study that's being led by City of Nelson staffer in the Climate and Energy Group, Alex Leffler. They took notice of the high performance envelope of the Cube 2.0 design and the use of carbon sequestering materials. And they decided they would do a case study on it. So we were elated that it was identified, and we're currently working through that with them. And some of the things it's going to be able to highlight is actually the operational sustainability of the design, not just that we're using mass timber, but it's a building designed to have low impact for all of its use, and yeah, we'll be able to have a study that shows you that. As Jamie mentioned, we received funding from REDIP, and so we're kicking off our final design. We're staying true to our vision and continuing to design for the facility as we've conceived of it. We have a couple of risk mitigation strategies in it in case we're not able to get all of our funding, but so far we're just staying the course. We're going to continue to apply for grants, and last year the feds announced that there's some money coming to sport infrastructure. And so that's one of the reasons why we're trying to position ourselves well with Spencer Herbert. And because that will be a major part of whether this could happen or not. It has happened, and quite recently there was a $33 million facility built in the Yukon, which was a complete rec complex, including pool, everything, and an Olympic worthy climbing gym. So we're not the only ones thinking about it. And rural people should have access to this. We are gonna make a request to the RDCK via the Rec Commission to consider the Cube 2.0 as a strategic priority for the region and to apply for funding on our behalf. It's a huge ask. We're not sure if it's feasible, but we're interested in doing a study conducted by a third party and helping to fund that study to show that this is a priority for the region in recreation, and we're hopeful for any consideration there. And otherwise, we'll just keep looking for large pieces of money. If you know any billionaires who need a good place to put money, let us know.
Don't go anywhere.
Not that easy.
Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. So my question to you is, you're trying to, all these avenues for funding. What is that corporate world like for this in terms of like, big climbing equipment brands or general climbing equipment companies? Because I see, you have your local sponsors here, which is super wonderful. But I would imagine there are very deep-pocketed companies out there that are interested in showcasing their products, or I don't know, how do you want to navigate that?
It's a really good question, and we've, I would say, just scratched the surface. I actually had a moment where I was down and I was like, oh, this is never gonna happen. And I reached out to a large corporate entity in Calgary that builds gyms, and I looked at what that would look like, how it would impact the vision of the product, the vision of the project, how it would service our members. And essentially it comes down to just money. I think the direction we'll go is we really believe in this being for the community. So we're gonna try to fund it without that, but there could be some kind of partnership there, but without compromising on the goals, it's pretty tricky. So the other strategy that we have for corporate donations is when we're a little bit further along, like if we have some kind of anchor grant, possibly from the province, I'd like to target corporations, and we're gonna be selling sort of wall space where there's permanent names and things like that in other projects. Like the Banff Center, for example, they'll have a name of a building or whatever. We'll break up different areas in the gym and then hopefully be able to attract corporate dollars. I think the likelihood of that will be better once we're a little further on in the capital fundraising, because I think they're even more risk averse than the government.
Okay. Just a supplemental, Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. And on the completely opposite side of funding, with provincial funding, are there rural funding streams that are about upgrading rural facilities or helping build rural facilities? I'm just thinking because our MLA now is the Minister of State for Rural Affairs, something like that. Like her whole thing is to get rural development happening. So do you think that there's more money in that area of provincial and rural development now?
Just to clarify the question, is there more money in upgrading facilities versus new facilities?
No, I just wonder, like, because rural development is a pretty important thing. I hear that when I go to conferences, it's a lot about, yes, the big cities get a lot of taxation federally, provincially, but rural development is just absolutely critical for the continuity of our country. So I'm just wondering if you've discovered anything in terms of those funding streams growing, or they're more available, or is it still a struggle?
Currently, basically, we work with a grant writing consultant, and she also has her finger on the pulse of what's open. At the moment, there's actually not much in anywhere in a large kind of capital funding. But what's cool is being rural, that if things like that do open up, and actually a few months ago there was one for manufacturing and it was focused on rural. We're a shoe-in for those because, you know, it's very specified. So we're keeping our eyes open, but it's a timing thing, and it's also, this is not gonna happen overnight. It's probably gonna take a few years of capital funding. One of the funding streams that we did investigate, but we weren't able to pursue, was called the Green Municipal Buildings Funding. And that one was very interesting because it provided not only a grant, but a loan that was very flexible in the way that it could be paid back so that you could bridge multiple years of stringing multiple grants together. So now that we know about those kind of funding strategies, we're just looking broadly, and anytime we qualify, we're pretty on it. And now with the ETSI support, we can probably staff someone to be on it.
Thank you.
Councillor Tate.
Thanks very much. Thanks for this. Thanks for keeping us in the loop of what's going on. It's definitely a long-term project, and I think the way that you're speaking now compared to a year ago and 2 years ago, I see that you're becoming an expert in fundraising and government processes. Yes, starts to become a part of how you talk to people. I had a curiosity, in your presentation you said social enterprise. Could you speak more about that? Because I'm not sure that we all have the same definition of what that means, and tell me what that looks like in the long-term planning.
Well, maybe I'll get your definition of social enterprise.
I don't have a great one, that's why I'm curious. So I think of the youth center as a social enterprise, and the campground, as I understood it, when the city took over the campground, was to provide employment, right, as a social enterprise, and to entry-level employment for, it's kind of my only definition that I have, so I'm curious.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, we're a nonprofit association. What we get to do is have a business that runs like a normal business, but we don't have to be purely profit-driven. So essentially, if you look at the way our association spends money, our money goes into our staff, into providing services for the community, and the only other place it goes is into saving for a bigger place to be able to do the first two. So there's no, it's just, you can have a much more community-focused business. To put it in perspective, I guess if you compare our gym to the rest of the gyms in BC, it's the cheapest gym. So it's the most accessible recreation in the province for climbing.
Yeah, it is a bit of a buzzword right now.
I love it.
As someone who works in media and marketing, it's a buzzword. I think it means it broadly covers, I think, basically anyone who's working for the greater good of the ultimate dollar, right? Greater good over, the ultimate dollar.
Great, thank you. Cool.
Councillor Lockwood.
So the funding in part is gonna go to the detailed design. Can you speak more about what that looks like over and above what we've seen up to this point? Is there kind of any significant changes? Is there some more color you can add to what we can expect?
I think, so conceptual design, essentially, really why we needed to do that was we had no idea what the scope was financially to pull a project like this off. We didn't have a lot of funds in place to do it either. So, we did our best. We showed it to as many people as possible. But I think the final design allows us to reach out and do a much better job, go dive deeper into it, ask the community more. So we get to test our assumptions. And even though we did a bit of community engagement with the first one, this time it's for real, and there's way more funding there to be able to take the time and do that.
Okay, so I have two follow-ups.
Okay, sure.
So the first one is about the footprint. Is there any change in the footprint or even the potential footprint? Because I know I've seen a couple of different lines drawn around the area available to it. One line that I saw that I found interesting goes right up over in the slope area, the sloped area where there's the tree cover and the fenced off storage area. Is that still considered part of the
We've never provided that.
No, I mean, I think it's probably staff
I think
drawn.
staff had a drawing of just a parcel of land that they own, but we've only been allocated, I think what we asked for in our conceptual design. There likely will be like small modifications to that. I don't think there's need to go any bigger on our end.
Right. Okay, it was more of a curiosity because I had seen that drawing and I was like, I wonder if things have changed since the original. Okay. The second question is more about fundraising, I guess. So the Olympics are going to be in LA. Climbing now is the 3 disciplines, not just the combined boulder league. And the growth of the sport has been remarkable. Is there a possibility of tapping into funding for the Olympic program or some of the funding that goes towards training the national team or providing potentially a national training center or at least a satellite training center here? It seems to me, in part because Canada has done really well at sports like snowboarding and these kind of emergent outdoor focused sports, and certainly mountain biking, for example, you know, with Jackson Goldstone, we dominate in these kind of sports. It's part of our national identity. But climbing is so facility dependent that Canada hasn't been able to compete against the likes of Japan and others. Is this something that we can do and can we support you in that? Because that's more of a government to government kind of question. So
a lot of these big capital asks are government to government. Whatever issue you're tackling, it seems that having like a municipality behind you or the district behind you is a big deal. I think the Olympic idea is a great one. We looked into a program that CIBC had that kind of they fund Olympic dreams, and it was much more aimed at like the athlete side of the funding. But I wonder, you know, is there some way to like navigate that and work on it for a facility?
Yeah, because in part you could use as a model, I think it's Canmore is one of the main centers for Nordic skiing. I mean, it's proximal to like Calgary, so there's a certain degree of like tapping into the big city, but there is an opportunity, I think, and again, because climbing, like a few other sports, require that facility. Like you can invest in the athletes, but if the athletes don't have the facilities, then they can't thrive. But Canada seems to be kind of making it barely with the scattering of facilities around the country that. Anyways, I'm just looking for, when we have conversations like we were in FCM 2 weeks ago, is there a message that you could package up for us related to that we could support you in talking to our government partners?
Yeah, I think it's much needed because if you look at how Canada places in these international events, like we're nowhere near the podium. Like we've had 2 Olympians from Canada go, both probably finish in the like 30 to 40 range. And it, you know, you look at, I don't want to look at much about what the US is doing, but they do have a national team facility in Salt Lake City that is mind-blowing. And then you can invest in the coaches, the people who put these programs together. So we have a lot of building to do here in Canada, and we're way behind.
Yeah. Okay.
Richmond Olympic. And Councilor Woodward, that was
I'm good, thanks.
did you?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm good.
Councilor Pinero.
Thanks, Rick.
Just to add on to what Rick was saying, I actually know the high performance director for Climbing Canada, because he was the high performance director for Boxing Canada just last year, so he just changed jobs and he's in Victoria, and I imagine that things are centered in Victoria as far as the national team goes, but
There's sort of a strong West Coast and a strong Toronto.
yeah, like that's a training hub, I suppose. So, but that's a person that for regional support you might wanna reach out to. I think he's a really open guy, and
What was his name?
Craig Devlin.
Craig Devlin.
Yeah.
You can send an email and introduce them.
I absolutely could, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Just making deals right now.
Yeah. I mean, he just,
You're at
that's, he
Olympics.
might be able to give a background of
JP
what sort of-
Climbing Center, jeez, who the fungus?
I think it's gotta be the J.
Yeah.
Jays.
Jeez. As long as you put a little boxing ring in there somewhere in the corner.
I'm just writing down his name, sorry.
Craig with a K and Devlin, Devlin.
Craig with a K,
Mhm.
that's unusual.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse.
That's unusual.
Counselor Panero, that was excellent. And then back over to the other J. Gee, this is an unbelievable night.
Jamie
Counselor
will answer
Woodward.
his next one.
Thank you, Mayor. I just, as this conversation is building, I'm wondering, you joked, you said, hope you don't need some billionaires, but I'm wondering, like, is there some kind of avenue you discovered to actually find, like, very wealthy funders who are interested in, particularly in climbing, or say in North America or Europe, that would be interested in something like this?
There is actually, like, I attended the,
There's a meetup group.
I attended the Banff Mountain Film Festival, and in terms of in Canada where those kind of people are, and where people who actually, that's their job, is to identify those funders in Canada for climbing.
Right.
I made some really good contacts on their board and on their staff who do that kind of funding, so I'm investigating that.
Right. So you get your individual, your corporate, your provincial, federal,
oligarch.
I was gonna say something, but I can
Yeah, go ahead.
wait. I'm usually the last guy that gets to go. Just in terms of, because your project is wood-centric, and this would be a really extreme consideration, I think, but there is a world symposium coming to Vancouver in September called the Wood Rise, all one word, WOODRISE, Wood Rise International Congress in late September. And this group gets together and mainly they talk about tall wood structures. They'll have a very strong European influence there where they're building, the 10, 12, 18-story wooden buildings. And I have no idea what the cost is to go to this Congress, but maybe just in terms of, this is an international symposium, they will have a trade show without a doubt in terms of just getting some names, and perhaps, you never know, within there could be somebody that's just dying to do a project like this. Like, as you're expanding your network of contacts, I wouldn't leave that off. This is an very unusual opportunity. I don't know how often, I don't even think this Congress comes to the North America very often, let alone the fact that it is in Vancouver this year.
That's doable.
Yeah, so because it's in Vancouver, it might be worth ponying up the money for the, whatever the registration might be, and maybe you just need to get a day pass, right? Like, so just investigate that. That's my advice. Because I do sit on the MITAC, the Provincial Committee on Mass Timber, and I know that we're planning to try to meet then, which completely conflicts with being a UBCM, because everything I do conflicts with something else. But that aside, Councillor Lochinberg.
So to build on that, you know the Tudors, I think, Andrew Marley. So Marley is the the value-added wood products specialist for BC, and so somebody to maybe link to as well.
I bet there's probably multiple people
Yeah.
from the region attending that show.
Yeah.
And I'm looking for an excuse to go to Squamish in September, so.
No doubt.
I see it all coming to fruition.
Use of that 50K. So the other thing I was thinking, something that I saw posted online was related to how this would be the only indoor climbing gym that's immediately connected to outdoor climbing within like, you know, a very short walking proximity. And there's something about that I think is special in the storytelling of Nelson, that what makes Nelson special as a place for obviously diverse recreation, skiing, mountain biking, climbing, and all of that. The fact that you can do so much within close proximity, you can literally mountain bike the same just above crags that you're climbing, above a gym that you're like, that kind of a lifestyle experience that is so accessible is so attractive to so many entrepreneurs and remote workers, like just, you know, going to the gym, you're surrounded by like engineers who work for companies spread all over the country, companies all over the world. And I think there's something to the resilience that we're trying to build as a city and as a region, economic resilience, that is about diversity. It's about leveraging the beautiful place and the lifestyle that we have to attract and hold people to this place. And I think that's a story we've always been trying to tell one way or the other, but we are missing some things to really lock it in as a livable destination for many people. The shoulder season challenge, the growing smoke in the summertime. So there's a few things that a facility like this, further investment in recreation like that we have overall, is going to be essential to our economic resilience and the thriving of our community. And so I know you guys are telling that story pretty well, but I'm thinking now more than ever, as we're looking at reimagining what economic resilience means for this region and border regions across the country, there's something that we can build on here. And a few of us, I think, are going to the Pacific Northwest Economic Region Conference next month, including Minister Anderson and a number of ministers. And I think there's something powerful about that meeting, like building up us as a destination, us as a great place to live, and these key assets, recreational assets that are kind of anchor for why you'd want to live here. And so, yeah, just keeping in mind, maybe Peter Moynes is the key person to connect with, I'm not sure, but building up like just like some sort of communication asset, like a couple of, like a one pager with some brochures, maybe even a web page that helps to tell that story, so that if we go to a conference like this, there's the QR code or whatever, that brochure, we're talking to somebody and we can just hand them that as like, ooh, you should invest in the Kootenays, you should move to the Kootenays, or you should, you know, put us on your map.
It's a bigger, I'm just gonna riff off that, because that would be great city-wise if we had that for our sports ambassador and cultural ambassador.
Yeah, that's a
Yes,
good point.
yes, but also yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Huh.
yeah, totally.
3 yes, Nate, from Councillor Tate, that's.
I'm a yes man.
Recently, a fellow named Matt Mosteller, he presented to several ministers in town regarding investing in the outdoor recreation economy. And there's a very similar theme that you're bringing up, and he does a really good job of storytelling. And one of the examples he had is there's actually, I think it's in Kimberley, like the ER or Cranbrook, the entire ER department is there. And they chose to work there because of these recreational assets that they have.
Yeah.
And that's like, it defines like the medical infrastructure, so it is much deeper than this very surface level recreation thing. It's part of what makes the place where you wanna live, and it attracts the people that you need to live in it.
Yeah. Yeah, well said.
Okay, so I don't see any other hands up, so one last look around the room. I think we're all good. So Cam and Jamie, thank you for coming and updating us. It's pretty exciting news since the last time you were here in terms of some of the funding that you've gotten. So the next time you come, we expect to hear even more exciting news.
Congratulations.
Thanks so much for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Congratulations to Jamie for her recent awards.
Oh no, Jamie, like so Councillor Lockenberg wants to talk about you.
Well, there's congratulations on your number of recent awards, but
Thank you so much. I appreciate you acknowledging that.
yeah.
I won the best outdoor adventure story from the Canadian Travel Media Association. It was about a story actually in Australia, but best story produced by a Canadian writer, I guess would be the right way to say it.
Congrats.
Excellent, excellent. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now on item number 9. And the city manager, verbal report.
Short, just want to mention the leadership workshop we had a couple weeks ago with our management staff and exempt staff. It really focused on a couple things that came out of the pulse check. We do this, trying to do it annually. We send this pulse check out to our staff just to ask them, you know, where things are at with them, how are they feeling, et cetera, and where, you know, kind of that satisfaction with work in the city. Workload is definitely one that came up as a challenge for all our staff, as how to manage the various projects and initiatives we have. So we spent a fair amount of time in that workshop, really looking for solutions to that, you know, everything from how we manage on a day-to-day basis to how do we better deploy technology and automation to manage workload better. The other piece was communication, and you know, both internally and externally. It's again, I think it's a symptom of a bit of the workload. Is it's really easy to get siloed in your own department and really be focused on your large work plan and not necessarily kind of communicating how that fits elsewhere in the organization. And we also, you know, talked about internal, external communication, you know, the impact of, you know, especially when staff are beat up in social media and those other things, and you know, that's hard for staff to do their jobs, and especially when they recognize that, you know, that the public doesn't really have the full story around decisions that are made. So one initiative that's come out of that is, which I think some of you that were at AKBLG heard the presentation by one of a communication consultant, was a newsletter. So our communication coordinator has, you know, drafted an initial sort of approach to a newsletter and a strategy. So we're gonna move forward with that. So there's a number of things that we have committed to as a leadership group to, you know, to address as part of that. And the only other one I want to mention, speaking as staff, is it was a pleasure to attend a retirement celebration for one of our employees that was 35 years with the city and just recently retired. So Brian Jones, our Parks lead hand now, and yeah, it was, you know, we talked about, you know, the amount of change that happened over that 35 years. That, you know, the playing fields were not at Lakeside when we started. The prestige was not there, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, so there's been a lot of change in our fair city over the years and certainly in recent years, you know, just to thank him for his contribution and you know, that those legacy projects that happened that, you know, people don't even think about today, that, you know, those playing fields were a vision of someone, much like we're hearing tonight, you know, someone has to have a vision and it takes a while to make that happen, and you know, Nelson's, I think, can pride itself on, you know, being entrepreneurial, not squashing visions, but you know, supporting visions and being a bit of a risk taker, so yeah, it was really nice to celebrate with him and the rest of the staff, really great turnout there. And I will pass it on to my colleagues if there's anything pressing that they wanna raise.
Yes, maybe the one thing to just, you know, if folks are able to watch this later, hopefully before July 2nd, because July 2nd is property tax due date. So just wanna remind people to make sure you come in person or go to your online banking, make that payment with enough lead time before July 2nd and claim your homeowner grant online. You know, every year there's always a small number of folks who pay everything except that $770 for the homeowner grant, but then forget to take that final step to pay the homeowner grant. So just make sure you go online and claim your homeowner grant if you're eligible. And
maybe the transit exchange, that, you know, that was a big part of the, you know, the challenges with traffic in the downtown right now is we've got, you know, Kootenay and, or Falls, Kootenay and, yeah, and Victoria tied up with that project, and that's really made moving around the city quite difficult, so I did see there's still hope for June 30th.
they're still going for June 30th, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
So
We just announced it, I hope
Yeah.
it's solid because
Yeah.
it hit the media, it's out there.
We checked it multiple times
Before
prior
it
to
went out.
that. So,
It won't be totally complete, it'll be functional.
correct.
I believe the shelters will come
Yeah.
as a second phase, but yeah.
And the washroom, there's gonna be like a
Yeah.
portaloo there that's
Herbaloo, yeah.
Herbaloo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Different companies.
They poured the concrete today.
yeah, so that, you know, obviously is a big one that's challenging with traffic in the downtown, so it will be paved and open by June 30th.
That is, I've confirmed that with our people that know project management, road building too, they felt that it was doable, so. And maybe just to build off of that is, and then mid-July, we'll be repaving of Stanley. So that was supposed to happen the year previous, but given the transit exchange, it would have, with the concrete additions and the change in grade, we had to push that off, so there will be a paving contract happening in mid-July as well, we're not sure on the exact date yet.
Location?
From Baker up, let me have a look here, yeah, Baker up to,
Because it was paved from Wildflower up a few
Yeah.
blocks, wasn't it?
yeah, so
A few years
it's
ago?
finishing up, let's see. Yeah, so 500 and 600 blocks, so either side of Victoria, it'll be paved.
Okay.
Up to where it was paved before.
And I think those are the major construction street projects in the downtown.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe one other thing that I'll just note, on the Brian Jones retirement, like last year, we also had another longtime employee, Peter Scheffler, retire. And the really wonderful thing is both of these employees are keen to come back and help where they can. So I just think that, you know, we talked about a certain portion of our staff and some leadership stuff, and it was really heartwarming with Brian, who's been here, like I said, nearly 35 years. When I spoke to him down there, he said that he was really keen to come back and work on projects, or even if, you know, we needed a hand plowing snow, he didn't mind doing stuff like that. So it's just great to see these folks been around for 35 years. You think they'd be, you know, making sure that the door didn't hit them on the way out, but they're keen to come back, so. That's good.
That's it for us.
Okay, we still have money, streets are getting paved.
Garbage is getting picked up.
garbage get picked up. I think we're kind of golden. You have a question?
I do have two questions. With regards to road building, is there any possibility of learning updates with regards to the Trevor Street extension? I'm always curious like how that's progressing, what that looks like, and the pathway that will go from the current rail trail to LVR-ish, because there used to be a pathway, but now there's a road in the middle and a cliff and that sort of stuff. So I was just curious, like, are there timelines for that? Like, how do we know how that's going?
Yeah.
How is it going?
So currently, we're still waiting on final plans from the developer. So the road has been punched in for the majority of the way. There's a short section right next to Davies where it hasn't been fully put through.
Yeah.
I think just to keep traffic out of there. So they're working on that. There's still some discussion around the utilities and the layout that will go through there. They have done a couple of walks with the developer and some trail builders from around to start laying out where that trail will go. But currently we don't have timelines. You know, there's the swap is, you know, occurring or has occurred. And then after that, it just becomes a developer's timeline
Okay.
as to when these things are happening. So
Okay.
I do know that, you know, the developer is keen to get the initial, I think, 9 lots or thereabouts on the market. So that'll be starting from the Trevor Street end, working its way over.
Okay.
So the PLR, we might be able to require the pathway, right?
Yeah, I'd have to have a look at the PLR, what's in there. Yeah, but we definitely have it documented.
That's our tool.
Yeah, that's our tool, and we have the pathway in there, it's understood, so.
And then this is nitty gritty, and I'm just curious, because when I walk there, there's like kind of like new slopes carved because of the road. Does in the end, what does that probably look like? Is it just grass? Are there like retaining blocks? I'm just curious how that lands in the end. Is that anything predictable at this point?
There's been some discussion about it. I'm not sure if there's anything in our bylaw, and the city manager might know a little bit better. It's difficult without planning here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it all has to be up to standards. And those standards are established in NMCD, Master Municipal Construction documents that identify all of that and the slope to ensure that it's safe. I don't believe that there's any plans for retaining walls along there, so they would actually be scaling it back to the slope that would hold it, or it's a rock slope that could sustain that, you know, whatever slope it's sitting at. So.
Yes, I have another question. At our last council meeting, we had a curiosity about evaluating how the market was going at Cottonwood. And we heard tonight some folks are, after 2 weeks, finding it to be different than it was in the past and kind of in a negative way. I was curious if there is a plan. I know that we've got a market advisory committee meeting coming up. Is there a plan for how to reevaluate and whether or not, and what that would look like, the reevaluation process?
I know Sarah is working on that with the new market coordinator. I know she's been very active down at the market and talking to vendors, and you know, we've heard some vendors did really well the first, you know, that first weekend or that first Wednesday. Some haven't done as well, so we'll get that information to you. That's definitely a commitment we made, is to evaluate it and, you know, market it and get information out there. I think one of the things I heard, it's early market season. This is always a slower time for markets than a busier summer tourism season. So I don't know how much of this is because it's early season and there was a change. Is it, you know, my sales down from, you know, early season last year to early season this year? We'll have to find that out, but we'll get that information.
That's the comparison that they're doing. They're business owners, so they know that at this week last year, this is what they made, and it's a pretty clear comparator from the data that I've seen.
I don't know if we've received that yet, but we'll check.
Okay. I've got some I can forward to you.
Thanks so much. Those are my questions.
I'll just say, you know, when Thursday we have our first market meeting, and then I'll report back next council meeting on what was said there and what was delivered. But I'll just say from my experience as a market manager, like anytime you disrupt the market, there is a time that has to rebuild back up and people's habits change as that change happens. So it's really challenging to like, there has to be a amount of time before you can actually assess whether that is a permanent change or do people shift their schedules to match the market again. So I think there is a time element here needs to play out a little bit.
So hopefully those businesses survive in the meantime.
We'll see.
Okay. Done. So we're on council reports. Councilors, Councilor Payne.
I sort of wanna ask a question before we move forward, if that's okay? But from what we came here out of. I just noticed, I get the Cranbrook newsletter, which is quite interesting, and what they came out with last week was just notifying people about, remember the report that you sent us about the snowpack level and the water and all of that? So it looks like they're sort of setting expectations for their community for what this summer might look like. I think that's a proactive approach that could serve us very, very well. Just educating people around what water restrictions could look like, and they're referring them to that report. And I think it does two things. It does mitigate some of the anxiety that people have around understanding that this has been a different spring than we've experienced. And do we have an understanding of, you know, what that's gonna look like for the city, and are we ready for it? Even if we are ready, if we don't communicate that, I don't think people have that level of comfort. And also, you know, as Councillor Woodward just said, it takes people a while to shift their behaviors. So if we can have people start thinking about water conservation now, before we have to implement, or even implementing water restrictions earlier than we have in the past, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think we all want to be prepared, we all want to contribute, but I feel they did an excellent job in communicating that information to their residents. Just saying, hey, this is what we've noticed, this is what we'd recommend, let's work on this together as a community. So that was around that. And then my second part of that is, I'm just wondering if we have had any success in getting the major grocery stores with the flow-through water coolers to shift over yet. Where are we on that project?
So I'm happy, I think I can speak a bit on both. So the newsletter that city manager referred to earlier, I think that's part of the intent. So there's the internal piece that will come out. There's also the external piece that we're looking at where we can start communicating more consistently with our residents. So we're really excited about the opportunities there, and that's where, you know, very similar to Cranbrook, we'd be sending things out, whether it's, you know, we're coming into the hot season, we have to get ready to start curbing the amount of water we're using, or it's talking about how to rake our leaves into the street to ensure for easy pickup. So we're really excited about that avenue, and Donna, our media person, is working hard on that. As far as the once through coolers, yes, we have made quite a few gains. In fact, we had a meeting just today on it. And, you know, ultimately, so the original report that came to council had calculations that were done. We've since been able to pull the data from the meters, and there will be something that we'll be bringing to council, I think, for a general update on water and how we're doing later on this summer, where there will be a more fulsome update. The summary is that, you know, when you look at the amount of overall water used in the city of Nelson, and then the amount of water used by the OTCs, actual amount of water used, the once through coolers, sorry. We have the possibility to shift that water usage by about 2% through the once through coolers. Whereas effort being put into that 98% would probably bear much more fruits. So that's the conversation where we're at now. We aren't fully solid on that, but of course we do have existing bylaw that ensures that any You know, if somebody pulls a permit to replace some of those coolers, then they aren't able to replace them with the once through. As well, no new buildings are allowed the once through, so we do feel confident that they will get weaned out. But yeah, that's sort of where we're at with the thinking on that right now, and realizing that despite the calculations previously showing there was actually quite a large amount of water that was being used, the actual meter readings show that it's a fairly small amount of water, and to reduce that, you know, we would kind of at best get about 2%.
I just come from a business background where a 2% improvement was pretty significant, so I don't wanna discount that. I don't understand what the challenge is of just asking those businesses to move forward. So they're not in compliance.
No, they're in compliance. That's, you can't put them in a new building, so we don't have a bylaw against the existing. Essentially, they've been grandfathered in.
Okay, so that's the barrier to asking them to change.
Well, there are tools, we can meter wire in
Yeah.
those businesses. That would be your tool, that would be the business message that you should switch out, right? So that is basically the tool we have now, is to meter those type of businesses that are high water users, that we want them to consider, right? We did that, you know, when we did that with, you know, when we put in ICI metering, even though we didn't necessarily create a metered rate, you know, we identified, you know, places like urinals running all the time, and we made quite a bit of gain there. So our challenge is, and we have been talking to a company that does rate design. We do not have a metered rate that is based on anything current, and it's we need to do that work, because right now I think if we used our meter rate, some of them would actually do better than so it'd be a signal the wrong way.
Okay, so it's just some analysis of our current system and how to upgrade it to a reality that would meet our climate goals. Cause I know that in the Nelson Next, there are water conservation goals.
Yeah, and there still are goals, and we're tackling them, you know, we've tackled them in a way of, you know, we've made huge gains in terms of managing our own systems, identifying, you know, where people have leaks or whatever. So I think we're meeting those.
No, I've seen the huge gains in the city system, that's for sure,
Yeah,
and
and
no
on
doubt
the-
about it. And when you see some of the equipment that they've pulled out of the areas that they're constructing, it's absolutely miraculous that we haven't seen more leakage, really. So, yep, just following up, thank you.
Councillors, any reports, activities? Nothing you're gonna have, like, well, you've got recreation or RDCK next round, I guess, but
Yeah, I was
go
gonna
ahead,
do
Councillor
next
Craigie.
round, cause it's just a recommendation from committee at the moment, so.
Right.
You could tell people what happened.
So we've had a discussion at Recreation around Front Street, and the recommendation to the board currently is to not donate the land from the RDCK to the project. Specifically, in the wording and discussion around commission was that this project as it stands currently is not helping the facility meet its goals and doesn't have the kind of clarity that the commissioners were looking for. So that we'll take that possibility off the table at the moment, but leaves the door open for future consideration of future projects if they come forward. That was the biggest piece that has to be affirmed by the regional district board still this week. And we did have a working group on the third phase of a what we heard report. We're expecting that final report to be out sometime in the middle of July, is the expectation currently. And just as a refresher, we of course went out in an open way and asked people what they wanted from their recreation engagement. Then we framed up detailed individual survey responses and group survey responses, which we collected. You know, the 2,000 people engaged in that process. Then we reported those findings back to the public and asked them in a third round to see if what we heard was what they heard. And so that third phase is what we've now reviewed and are incorporating into a final set of conclusions and recommendations about the campus writ large and the works that we will derive recommendations from going forward at Recreation.
Yeah.
We also had a really great presentation from the Kubi Climbing the other day that really spoke to what you were saying earlier about the opportunities for facilities in close proximity in that whole entire area. Just looking for additional support on how we work together on that.
Sure. I don't think we've had a meeting since our last Nelson Economic Development meeting on the 4th. So there was quite a bit of talk about the market there and the economic impacts of the market moving. That was quite fresh at that time. So I think that feedback has been heard by the table and by staff. So good to know that there's lots of fingers in the pie there and everybody looking for a solution. I wanted to share a personal experience. This past weekend, I actually attended my very first green burial in Victoria. And we had talked about these natural burials here at the City of Nelson and how that's starting to roll out in large municipalities and other places. And it was really interesting to participate in that and see how the world is changing and how we can make a difference even when we die. So I thought that was quite nice. So like I'm looking forward to seeing how that can roll out in our little place as well, because there is some complexity to the processes that we're not used to if you don't have a coffin, right? It's a whole other thing. And rec commission's swimming along and
Just keep swimming.
just keep swimming. I think there was one other thing that I wanted to report, but I am getting tired, so thank you.
It was parks that we had
Go ahead.
just.
Yeah, I was confused when you said that.
Yeah,
I didn't
no,
want
I was
to
like,
correct you.
it wasn't today, but it was so recently, it had to be rec, but it was parks.
Parts, okay.
Okay, so, I don't know, my plate has been full and this calendar looks like I've been doing a lot of things, but the only thing I would like to say probably is I had, as I always do, a wonderful time being able to represent all of you with a few opening remarks to the 2025 graduating class at LVR Rogers last Friday. And it's always so great to see all those shiny young faces crossing the stage. There was 200 graduates, so up a few from last year, and I think they all, we all got through it, 3 hours. Congratulations to your son for graduating, I
Some of
believe.
those kids aren't so shiny, they've got full mustaches.
I know.
It's a whole thing. The mustaches are back.
Yeah, and I think your son got an award.
For best mustache? Sorry.
It's so hard. If there was one thing that, I guess, as we talk about things in the city, if we could somehow fix the sound in the, I guess that's for us to discuss at the rec commission, the next meeting, the sound, because that's the RDCK building.
They do
Yeah,
have a
you
new
know what,
sound
I don't know how well you hear it out in the audience, but I can tell you when you sit on the stage and all of us that are there as presenters, and there's a lot of people presenting, and you barely hear the student's name, and then, you know, all of a sudden 10 people that are in the stands jump up to hand out awards, and I'm like, I have no idea what the awards were, right? Like you kind of know, okay, that they get a little bag if they've got the double dogwood. And then I had the lovely Indigenous woman sitting next to me who was giving out the little gifts that they give out. And then all the rest of it was kind of just a blur, and it would be nice to be able to hear that.
I think that the sound setup for grad is different than like the sound setup for hockey games because of who is doing the sound setup, right? So that's kind of interesting aspect of a multi-use indoor facility.
Anyways, That would be my only, I'll ask you, did you hear?
I agree, it was challenging to hear, and you know, you videoed it and I tried to listen even to the video and it was pretty hard to hear what was going on, so.
Yeah.
But you know, you pick up most of it, so.
Oh, yeah. And everybody's just having so much fun that doesn't really probably, at the end of the day, getting that certificate, and they have the lovely grad class inside of it. It's a huge, big thing they get that's got their diploma in it, so. And then, for one of the few days that we've had in many years, it didn't rain on the cavalcade, so it was a double down great weekend for the class of 2025, so that's my report.
I'm just gonna pipe in there. It's interesting as a facility that rents it out, sound and visuals can really be a strong component, and maybe it's something about finding part of that rental fee that we add in, where we have a preferred person who helps support the sound and video. Right, cause that's what some other venues will do, is you'll have your rental rate if you're bringing your own tech, and you'll have your rental rate if the tech's provided, but then if there's one person who knows how to run that facility, it's the same set of skills being brought forward every time.
It's like a recreation discussion.
As I say, like I said, it's not our discussion, but the three of us could have it, bring it back again, but yeah, that's, cause I think that there's a lot of people there, and I do feel for sort of like the grandmas and the grandpas that, you know, if you're struggling to hear what's going on, that, you know, a lot of family members are there really wanting to cheer on. The great thing about it is behind me is the picture of every graduate with their name, so you know who's on the stage at the given moment, but yeah, it was.
You wanna be known as a facility that sounds good and pulls off a good event, so people rent you more.
Yeah, so if there's nothing else, councillors, there was no late items for the.
I do have a report, sorry.
Oh, you do have a report?
I do.
Oh, okay, I was wondering, I thought.
I had
okay.
a question and then it moved on, so I do have a report.
Yep. Okay.
I attended along with the mayor and I sat at the table with a number of police officers, the event that Intercultural Kootenays sponsored, where they brought in Dr. Lisa Gunderson to talk about diversity, equity and inclusion. She was doing a full round through the city. She spoke at, I'm gonna say the wrong school. At Trafalgar, thank you, to a rapt crowd, it sounded like, and she did an afternoon event and then an evening event, all very well attended and very engaging. The Nelson Museum and Art Gallery has opened an exhibit called Deep Roots, which is about forestry in our area. Pretty fascinating, it's in the small gallery, but they've got lots of interesting material. And there will be a panel with some local experts in July, which I'm sure will be pretty amazing because Dr. Herb Hammond will be there, I believe Dr. Greg Utzig and a number of other individuals talking about what really is one of the foundational economic platforms of our community. Go by Bike Week ended with a ride of about 40 people around the city and a barbecue at the Nelson Campground. So the Nelson Campground crew did an excellent job of hosting that, and it was a fun barbecue. Always interesting to ride down, you know, all of the active transportation routes that we have in our city, especially when you have a big crowd like that. So it was really great to see. As we were riding along, people were also just joining that didn't know about the event but thought it looked like fun and came along. Just wanted to mention one thing from the Nelson Fentanyl Task Force meeting is that there seems to be a pill press in our area that is manufacturing illicit drugs that look like prescription drugs. Very, very dangerous what the components of these are. And they say the most vulnerable individuals are young people who may not have an understanding of the dangers involved in that. They think they are getting something that's, you know, prescribable, so they feel it's safe. Wrong, get your drugs checked at Anchors, or just, I'm not gonna say just don't do it, that's sort of foolish. Yesterday and today, it's the 10th anniversary of the Sinaiacs Canoe Journey, where they start just above Revelstoke, and canoe until they get down to Kettle Falls. And we have always been really fortunate to have a group that hosts them here. There's an excellent event over at the Nelson Museum yesterday, amazing storytelling again, well attended. And today they had a barbecue in Castlegar at the Confluence, which is called Capitals. I had a piece of salmon. Wow, that's the only way to do it now, in my opinion, is to cook it over wood smoke, but I think you have to have the expert there to do it. I was very grateful to be able to attend that. I do just want to remind everyone that the public hearing for the Nelson Cares development is on, I wrote it down, on the 23rd, which is next Monday. So if you have comments that you want to bring forward for that public hearing, best to have them into Development Services by this Friday so that they can be compiled and considered in that public hearing, but you're also welcome to come and give your opinion at that point in time. So as usual, lots going on in our small town, some amazing, and I just definitely would recommend going to the museum to see the exhibition. I was not born in an area where forestry was a big thing. I came from dairy country, so in the community I grew up in, there's a statue of a cow. So for me, it's always a great learning experience to understand the deep history that we have around that. That's it for me.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Anybody else?
Just a quick one about FCM, that, because I don't think it's been covered yet. One event that I went to at FCM was the Elbows Up for Climate event. Overall FCM, I was quite surprised at how much climate was on the agenda, and interestingly, the timing was really timely, because I was sitting at the table with mayor, or the councillors, two councillors from Flin Flon, while they were dealing with evacuation of their entire community. And so this was happening, while they were sitting at FCM, and they couldn't go back. And the mayor was challenged by that too. So it was really timely, and this was actually, interestingly, there was a number of other communities that were dealing with other crises in the moment. And so when at the Elbows Up for Climate event on Friday, which had built on a number of other events over the course of the day, it was incredibly powerful. They had the mayor, Robert Ireland of Jasper, who presented, Spencer Coyne from Princeton, and then David Miller, former mayor of Toronto, were the three keynotes. And their stories about dealing with wildfire flooding were pretty powerful. And David Miller who's the co-chair of this Elbows Up for Climate thing that some of us have signed on to, led by C40, was quite meaningful in this moment because of the number of communities, the sheer number of communities across North America that are dealing with climate-related impacts. It hit a level that I don't think any of us have seen before. And yet, climate had fallen off the agenda in the face of other things like the tariffs and so on. So this event, as part of the broader movement, was to make sure to keep reminding people this is really important. And then FCM really picked up the torch and amplified similar messages to the federal government to say the climate impacts are real. Make sure to continue to support and invest in Canadian safety at such a critical time. GMF announced, so the Green Municipal Fund was also quite present through FCM and announced a number of programs to help fund climate-related and adaptation-related projects. So they're investing in projects for municipalities. I think staff are probably already aware of these new funding tranches, but still it was good to hear the perspective of FCM, GMF, and that the continued pressure that FCM is making to the federal government to keep climate on the agenda, because we've got a number of risks and costs coming down the pike. overall, we have to still maintain our responsibility to reduce emissions and reduce impact. So that was a big message at FCM. Number of really great events to amplify that message, and I think we were generally well represented by our FCM colleagues there.
Could I add one more thing?
Councillor Payne.
It came, you just reminded me, it did come up at the Nelson Committee on Homelessness meeting. Stefan Cote and Heather Slack were there talking about emergency preparedness. So they were talking to the social service agencies about it, but it's just one of those messages that needs to be amplified out. Your grab and go bag and your essential documents. Get them ready, just be by the door. I mean, these are communities who never thought it would happen to them. And it's not something, I remember seeing a movie called Big's Little Farm where the fire's coming over the hill and she's grabbing a pool noodle and a few other weird things to put in the bag because they just didn't think. It's much easier to do it now, have it by the door and never use it than to try and figure it out when you're getting the news. So get out there. There is lots of information through our emergency preparedness, the BC government's emergency preparedness. You can get lots of help. Organize your neighborhood, have a fun event around it. Just do it.
We're gonna change the Nike swipe of just do it to the Nelson wave of just do it. So thank you, Councillor Payne. Anybody else in listening to the conversations, think of anything else? We did, Councillor Lockenberg, a few of us talked about FCM last meeting because you were still
In transit.
in transit in a way, so yeah, you and Councillor Woodward missed a little bit, but the other three of us were back and yeah.
I just wanna say that I found that experience to be phenomenal. FCM really, the location was, I've never felt so Canadian. Just this sense of being part of something and having the 2,000 delegates. I got to speak to a councillor from McElwood and a councillor from Nova Scotia, and just got to talk to these people from all over Canada. And then all of the workshops that I went to were, it was a really great experience, and having it in Ottawa as kind of the center of Canadian political life really felt somewhat profound too. So it was, I found it to be a really excellent experience.
And it's back in Alberta next year. Did BC do something wrong that we don't get an
FCM
whack at the pie?
Good question.
Well,
I mean,
It hasn't been that long since we had it in, yeah.
Yeah, well, Alberta's had it alternate in.
Yeah, and that's.
Nothing personal. Manitoba, Saskatchewan, there's got to be other
We did have,
western
we did
provinces.
have Regina.
Regina, yeah.
I can't confirm that
They do try to go back and forth.
Jesse
It's tough.
did talk to a lot of people. The number of times I ran into someone and had a conversation and they're like, I just talked
To someone else from Nelson.
And every time they describe it, it was.
Jesse, I didn't say.
I worked the room.
I was tall and bald?
Hey,
Tall,
So,
bold, and friendly, yeah.
we can chat about FCM after we adjourn, so. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, all the hands went up. I'll go with Lockenberg and Panero this round. And all those in favor, and that carries. Thank you for the council meeting this evening.
Thank you.